Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Okay, so regardless of how massive a nation's GDP is, or where its borders are drawn, or even its political ideology, literally every single society on Earth is wrestling with the exact same invisible engine driving its choices. We are talking about the fundamental economic problem.
And really, it all boils down to this one friction that we all just inherently get. Why can't we just have everything we want? I mean, human desires are a moving target, right? They're virtually infinite. The second we satisfy one want, an entirely new industry just springs up to create another one. But the physical reality of our planet and the resources we actually have, well, they stubbornly refuse to cooperate with those infinite desires.
So, that brings us face to face with scarcity. It's the cold, hard reality that our resources, land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, are fundamentally capped. Because they're limited, they inherently have alternative uses. This right here is the very core of opportunity cost. Think about the massive mobilization of resources during World War II. Governments couldn't just magically produce infinite tanks and infinite consumer goods at the exact same time. The steel routed to build a Sherman tank was steel that was inherently denied to domestic automobile manufacturers. Because of scarcity, every single allocation is a choice, and every choice demands a sacrifice.
Now, because of this scarcity, society naturally splinters into three absolutely unavoidable questions that demand immediate answers. We're forced to figure out what to produce, how to produce it, and for whom. Every economic system, every piece of legislation, and every market dynamic in human history is really just an attempt to answer these three specific questions.
Question 1. What to produce? Since an economy just cannot produce unlimited quantities of literally everything, we are forced into these massive macro-level trade-offs. You'll often hear this framed in economics as the classic guns versus butter model. Basically, a nation has to decide how to balance its resources between national defense and civilian goods. Do you direct your workforce and raw materials toward agricultural development to secure your domestic food supply? Or do you pivot heavily toward industrial expansion? Do you dedicate engineering talent and steel to build state-of-the-art hospitals? Or to construct vast highway networks to boost interstate trade? It's tough, right? Because choosing more of one mathematically guarantees less of the other.
And getting the exact quantity right is absolutely crucial. If society miscalculates, the consequences are pretty stark. Overproduction leads to warehouses just overflowing with unsold goods. It's a massive, tragic wastage of precious capital and raw materials that could have been deployed efficiently somewhere else. But on the flip side, underproduction is equally disastrous. It creates painful market shortages, supply chain bottlenecks, and leaves critical human needs completely unmet. So economies have to constantly calibrate demand to avoid these massive inefficiencies.
Moving right along to question 2, how to produce. Okay, so once we know what we're making, we have two primary pathways to actually make it. First, we have labor-intensive techniques. These rely heavily on human workers and require a lot less heavy machinery. This makes perfect strategic sense for developing nations with massive growing populations where creating widespread employment is just a huge socioeconomic goal. Think handlooms, things like that. But on the flip side, we have capital-intensive techniques. These rely heavily on automation and advanced machinery. For perspective, in modern automotive manufacturing hubs like South Korea, there are over 1,000 industrial robots deployed for every 10,000 human employees. Now that requires staggering upfront capital investment, but the resulting speed, scale, and precision are just unparalleled. Ultimately, the goal is always selecting the method that optimizes output based on a country's unique resource endowments.
And that brings us to question 3. For whom to produce?
Now, once the output actually exists, we hit the most politically and socially charged question of all. How is it distributed? Because let's face it, individuals in a society do not generate equal incomes. That's due to highly varied skill sets, asset ownership, and entrepreneurial success. So society has to make a fundamental call here. Do we rely purely on the ability to pay? That's where purchasing power dictates who gets the luxury vehicles and premium real estate. Or do we prioritize need-based distribution? That's where essential, baseline goods like healthcare and early education are distributed based on human necessity, completely regardless of an individual's purchasing power.
And purchasing power isn't just arbitrary. It's strictly dictated by how a society rewards its factors of production. If you own land, your economic reward is rent. If you provide labor, you earn wages. Those who deploy capital earn interest, and entrepreneurs who absorb market risk, well, they chase profit. The delicate balance and distribution of these specific rewards throughout an economy literally dictate who ultimately holds the capital to consume the goods being produced.
Three systems, three solutions. Let's look at the three distinct macroeconomic frameworks human history has produced to battle scarcity.
The first framework is the market economy, traditionally known as capitalism. Here, decisions are entirely decentralized and driven by the price mechanism. It features private resource ownership and a relentless profit motive. So what to produce is answered by whatever consumers actually demand. Think of the electric vehicle market today. As consumer demand and price signals shifted, legacy automakers rapidly retooled entire multi-billion-dollar supply chains to produce EVs, simply because it became highly profitable. How to produce is driven by whatever method minimizes costs to maximize those profits. And for whom is answered purely by purchasing power in the open market.
The second framework is the centrally planned economy, or socialism. Here, major economic decisions are monopolized by a central government authority. It features state ownership of resources, aiming for broad social welfare rather than individual corporate profit. A really fascinating historical example of this is the Soviet Union's Gosplan agency. They literally attempted to manually set production quotas and prices for millions of individual goods across an entire continent. It was an incredibly complex logistical feat. In this system, what to produce is dictated by state planners, how to produce aligns with national directives, and goods are distributed based on determined social priorities rather than fluctuating market demand.
The third framework, and this is the one that really dominates the modern global landscape, is the mixed economy. This system synthesizes elements of both previous models, featuring a coexistence of robust private enterprise and public sector oversight. The free market primarily dictates production, fostering rapid technological innovation and efficiency. But simultaneously, the government steps in to manage vast welfare programs, build critical national infrastructure, and stabilize markets during crises. In nations like India, the United Kingdom, and Canada, you see this dynamic balance in action. You've got highly competitive private tech and retail sectors operating directly alongside government-managed healthcare and social security systems.
Now, as our global population surges and our planetary resources continue to shrink, the universal friction of scarcity is only going to intensify. Every society is going to continually be forced to answer what, how, and for whom. So I want to leave you with this thought. As we look to the future, which economic system, or maybe what entirely new blend of systems, will be best equipped to flexibly answer these three fundamental questions for the next generation? Thanks for joining me on this explainer.